What's up, Silas here. So I'm going to give you my picks for the World Cup and just talk about a few things and also a review of Olivier Atton or Captain Tsubasa. So my picks for the World Cup, I've been watching some of the matches and it's like group stages. Now they're getting into the round of 16, I think Monday or something like that. But that's like tomorrow, something like that. The last couple of rounds. I am going with Japan, and for Japan, it's partially because of this Captain Tsubasa thing, Olivier Tom. I grew up watching like I was a little kid when I was an infant. I remember watching Olivier Tom. It's like Olivier Tom, na 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 na, Tom Olivier. So it's about. I'm going to get into the actual review of the first arc of Olivier Tom or Captain Tsubasa, which I found out it was called Captain Tsubasa years later because this is a Japanese show, Japanese show. It's a Japanime with this character Olivier Atton, who that's the name I grew up with him as. He's a football player. He's just this little kid, and he plays football and soccer. Football. He plays that. He just loves this ball, and he goes with it. And he grows up, and then he wants to play for the Japanese national team. He wants to be a professional football player, and that's just his story. And it goes from him being a kid, uh, qualifying for the actual national teams and things like that, going to high school, things like that. It's an excellent show. I am actually, instead of watching the World Cup, I just found there's actually a YouTube channel, the Olivier Tom Officiel, and it's actually the French channel putting up the French dub of it, and I'm loving it. I'm just watching it. I'm right now on episode 7. I'm going to watch a few each day and then work my way up to, there's like 120 of them. And there's another one. Apparently they come back. So I don't even remember how far I watched the season when I was a kid, but for me that's what it was. To me, I grew up with this, and I'm just trying to wonder. There's another one, Eye Shield. I don't know if that was as old as Olivier Tom. I don't think it's old as Olivier Tom. That's American football, but how much this actually has an effect in people growing up wanting to play the sport. And with Japan, I'm still a big fan of anime and manga. And I've seen a lot of anime and manga into the Japanese culture, seeing how they treat it, where we know in general that the Japanese are not the most athletically gifted people on the international stage. Yet when I actually see the actual amount of detail and information that goes into some of these mangas and animes, the mangakas and creators actually go in and research the sports. I've seen very many, I've read very many. In fact, I think I should do some more series where I'm reviewing these things, where they actually go into a lot of the details of how these things work, how the players train, how there's a lot of there's a good amount of detail and accuracy actually put into this. And then, of course, they go with the exaggerated thing. Like with this anime, they have these super kicks where the ball is like shaped like a bean, making this noise. It's like being kicked from across. But it's just anyway. It's very hype. I very much like it. And I think the Japanese, if the Japanese team won, it would be amazing to see because I think it would be good for the Japanese culture. I think they really like these kind of things, and I think just seeing the coverage, just having some kind of closeness, affinity to it from getting into Japanese culture through anime and manga, and also that whole thing like, oh, we have to see somebody who looks like us do things. With this show, Olivier Tom, it's about Olivier Tom. First of all, Japanese anime characters don't necessarily look Asian, and I think there's something about just telling stories. Somebody can grow up with a story, and I think that's part of why I've had some familiarity and affinity towards football over just American football. I did not grow up watching American football, even though I did end up playing it. But anyway, so I'll get back to Olivaton at the end of this once I get to my other picks because those will be rather quick. With the Japanese thing, I think it'd be good to see them win. It would be kind of like when the Japanese tsunami happened in 2001. Might be wrong about the actual date, but I remember being like, wow, we're going to see a lot of footage here because of just how the Japanese culture is. And I'm rather fascinated with the Oriental cultures and things like that. But just they would have coverage, they would have a lot of film, and it was a horrible situation. But just seeing the coverage and seeing the way they react to it and seeing the way they deal with something, a tragedy of that sort, I think it would also be interesting to see how they deal with such a win, such an exciting thing, the opposite of that, and just see how the Japanese culture adjusts to that. My other pick is France. Since I was born in France, I have an affinity to them, and they had that issue back in, I think, 2004 or something. They had an issue with the World Cup team where so that cut off a bit. But yeah, I was born there, and then I also lived in Italy. Italy's not in the World Cup this year, and I have some geographical affinity to those places. And then the last one I think I would like to pick because I mean, sorry, that's a big thing. Geographical affinity is a big thing. I've talked to a few people here in Kenya just walking around like the butcher shop. I just went and I talked to the guy who was getting some meat. He sells some pretty decent meat. It's close by. It's convenient. And I'm talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, who are you supporting? He's like, any African team. I'm like, why African teams? Like, why are you just picking this arbitrary locational thing? But yeah, it does make some sense. And I've actually lived in France, lived in Italy, and I have an affinity to those places. But then I was trying to talk to this guy. I was like, okay, how about like Egyptian, like super-Saharan teams, the teams above the Sahara Desert. I'm like, to me, that's pretty much the Middle East. I don't really consider that African culture. But he's like, oh, all African. I'm like, are they really African? Do they really consider themselves African up there? A lot of the people, I think they don't. They consider themselves more Arab if you ask them about that. I guess locational-wise, yes, they are on the African continent. But then the Eurasian continent is one continent. It's not like people in Russia are going to be super excited if Japan wins, or no, Japan's an island off the coast. But you know what I mean. It's the same landmass. It's not like India wins and then people in Russia are excited because we share the same landmass, because they understand, yes, we may be on the same landmass, but there's a difference in our culture and our peoples when we move this far away. And I think that's the same thing with the Saharan Desert. When you go to trans-Saharan or super-Saharan versus sub-Saharan, those are rather different peoples. Even within those countries, there's enough differences and things like that. But there is this uniting thing about the World Cup that brings people together in a certain way, which is a positive thing. Okay, the last team I had mentioned there, if Russia, why would Russia get excited? I think it would just be good to Russia to win, because 6 times out of, I think, the 19 or something like that, 20 World Cups, the local team has won. I think that would be cool. And I just know from seeing the way the political climate is in the United States of America, there's going to be some people out there who think that Donald J. Trump somehow is super excited because he's been colluding with the Russians, and having this kind of situation would be like, oh, collusion. And also just in general, the general gripes that will come out of actual collusion between the host country and the actual FIFA, the governing board of the World Cup, because they are just things where it's like the host country almost always gets out of the first of the group stages. I guess I could look that up. I'm not going to look that up, but I'm wondering how often that happens. And there's people just talking about, is there collusion? Is there something about home field advantage? But I think that'd just be a cool thing to see get them come up. And even if it's just one salty person in the United States of America thinking this is some kind of Trump related thing and making Trump happy, and then them being salty about Russia and thing like that, for me that would be more than worth it. So for those teams, I think France of those teams probably has the highest actual possibility of winning the tournament from what I know about the teams. But yeah, that's kind of my thing on that. Now I'm going to get into the actual review of the first arc of Captain Tsubasa and just give some thoughts and things like that. As I'd mentioned, I think it's really cool that you have this kind of thing where it's like, look, the kind of messages and ideas that are being taken with this. And the anime is really old. I don't know how one was created, but I'm just remembering, like, I was watching this in the 80s. It was already dubbed to French in the 80s, early 80s. So how old is this? But it still carries. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still watching it. I'm actually watching it in French. Like, some of the French is actually coming back just from those memories. And I'm trying to think of the things that are tied in with this. How much of my current affinity for Japanese culture is still there due to watching anime at this age? How much did it help me learn the French language? How much does it help me with, like, my sports or the thing? It's the song of it. It's just an amazing thing. Olivier Atton. Great show. So I'm watching this show, and the first start of it, I'm wondering, even if you're talking about, oh, we need to see people who look like us for us to do this, he meets a coach in the first episode that's actually from the Brazilian team. He was a captain on the Brazilian national team. And then it turns out that he's actually having some issues. He's actually getting some medical treatment for it. He couldn't play because of some medical treatment. And now he's actually ends up coaching Olive's team. Olive moves to a new town. He joins the football team there. He meets some kids there who are being harassed off this field, and they find Tom, which is this goalkeeper character who's always wearing he's always wearing his goalkeeper gear. Just walking around in public in his goalkeeper gear. I'm like, what are you doing, Tom? Put some actual regular clothes on. So he's actually, him and his team are harassing these other people off the field. Then Olive comes in there and shows him, like, hey, look, I can actually play. He has this thing where he kicks this ball off of this really high shrine area, and this goes like seems like miles down to Tom's backyard. Tom, I think, is a wealthier kid. He's standing there with his goalie coach, and then the ball just rolls in, and then he walks around. He's like wondering who kicked this ball, who kicked this ball, and then he sees Tom. He sees Olive walking with these two new kids that he met at the playground, and then Olive's kicking, and then he wonders like, who is that kid I don't know? Then Tom kicks the ball at Olive. Knocks the ball up in the air, and then the ball starts coming down. There's a bus coming down the street. And Olive kicks the ball and it just goes under the bus, and then Tom catches it, and then you can see that's the rivalry. The rivalry starts in that thing, and then he sets up a thing where he's like, "Look, now we're going to start a team." Olive joins the team of this new school, and then people become fans. A really cool thing about Japanese manga and anime thing is the cheer squads, especially in these sports genre of it. They're people who are just dedicated cheerleaders, and they wear these outfits. And there's this female character, I forget her name. She's leading the cheer squad, and she's this big upping Olive. The whole school starts falling in love with him. The team starts coming up with it. The coach is putting them together. They start running around with footballs and kicking them around. This is kind of like the thing in The Water Boy where they were like talking about Bobby Boucher had to walk around with the football so he doesn't drop it because he was fumbling it a lot or something like that. No, was that I'm getting my sports activities mixed up. This might have been no, it was I forget. It was that movie that was based off of the Florida State Seminoles football team with I don't say Mekhi Phifer and someone else. It was a really good movie, but the guy had to hold the ball, and anybody who could actually grab the ball back from him, grab the ball from him during the school days, and actually take it back to the coach, then he would be punished or something like that. So I'm forgetting the name of that. It's not Friday Night Lights is a different one. I can't believe I can't. Anyway, back to this. This is a completely all over the place review. So Olivier Tom, where were we? They're running out the footballs. They're getting better at it. Then they have a match against another practice team, and they actually end up, I think, winning against that. They have some situations where Olive is actually being told to be the goalie by the coach so he can understand more about the actual his opponent Tom, who's a goalie, and understand how they react to the ball, so he can get some more understanding. So there's just showing how it's like, look, for you to understand somebody else, you can practice what they do. You can try to be empathic in that way. You can learn from actually watching them. You can have this rivalry. It doesn't necessarily have to be you exactly living that life for you to actually get something from that. I don't know if that actually makes any sense. So a few more things. Sorry, I was just thinking about this. They just in episode 8, they're showing that it's another reminder of remember this kick from this beginning. So that's another thing with animation, kind of making me learn that hey, you can actually have these arcs. You call back to this thing. You introduce something, then you call back to it. So they actually have gone back, and another thing, they actually gone the call back to that kick at the start in episode 8. In the start of it, they're showing the coach having that initial kick where it hits off the bar and then he kicks it back. And another thing I was thinking with the with that cheerleader character, she's leading a team of male cheerleaders, and she's just really obsessed. She gets very obsessive about Olive, and I think probably in the future they're going to might have some kind of romantic relationship between the two. But she's she's very possessive about him, and there's also something that shows in the whole school is like, oh, the new kid comes in and everybody's fascinated with the kid, and that's something I remember from the United States of America from being in school. Like I was often the new kid in a lot of places. But also, no, was I the new kid a lot? No, when I got to the United States of America, I got to somewhere in middle school. I was the new kid, but then in middle school for the rest of the time, through high school, I stayed in the same school system. So other people came in. But when other people came in, people were kind of fascinated. Oh, what's this kid doing? What's this kid about? But also just the general, I know it's a sports anime, so they're going to focus on that. But just the general thing of people being athletic and being liked by other people, that's a normal thing. And even they have in the gender roles here where the females seem to really like Olive because he's very excellent at it. One more thing I wanted to point out was just this cool thing that was brought out where one of the coaches was like, yeah, you're going to have to walk around. Going to have to go around with the football your whole time. As part of the training, your familiarity with it, you're just going to run around the football because Olive has a football with him at all times. And there's this other character that's coming in and they've shown and he has a football with him at all times as well. And I think that character, I don't know, I forget what team the character joins, but he's probably going to join Olive's team. But anyway, he comes in. They they have to carry the football around with them at all times. They're not allowed to touch the football because they're saying, okay, the football is your friend. Think about it as your best friend. It doesn't like being carried, so you use your foot. And it's similar to this one movie. I'm forgetting the name. It was based off of the Florida State Seminoles college football team, where one of the characters played, I think, by Mekhi Phifer. he was fumbling the ball, and the coach was like, "Okay, to fix the fumbling of the ball, you have to actually carry the ball with you at all times, walking around the campus. And if anybody can get that ball away from you and bring it back to me, they get rewarded, and he gets punished." So there's something with that. Forgetting the name, it's not Friday Night Lights. Some of you may know exactly what I'm talking about here. It had this player that was Kane. In we're able Kane we're able something. I'm going to look this up. Yeah, so the name of the movie was The Program, and I don't even think it was Mackay Pfeiffer. Let me double check and see who this was. But great film. Halle Berry was in it. Mackay Pfeiffer, Omar Epps. I'm getting my black actors mixed up. So James Caan, Halle Berry, Omar Epps, Craig Sheffer as Joe Kane, and Kane were able. Um, Abraham Bernoulli, Bud Light, Kaminsky. There was this like guy taking steroids. There was this one African American character who was like I don't like Adidas. I don't need to know how to spell. All I need to know is how to sign my check. You know, where he's like people understand it was for some people that was just a lifeline. That's what they're doing. He was like, I don't care about actual school, and it was a very, I think it was a very honest look. It was Alvin Mack's character by Dwayne Harris. He was just this character from this small rural area, and I think in the south somewhere, a very poor area, in this African American character, and he was just like, look, my main reason for playing this, and spoiler alert, he ends up breaking his leg, and then they show this really poignant scene where he's back watching them actually play in the championship game, but he's back at home, and he's not going to get his NFL money and contract and money anymore. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good look at it. So just seeing the way different people look at sports, the way different kind of forms of entertainment and things like that tell the stories about sports and how ingrained it is into the culture and society is an interesting thing. But yeah, back to stuff about Captain Tsubasa, Olivier Atton. Okay, so some more information in episode 8. Um, Tom is leaving. Tom's the coach, as I mentioned. Not the coach, the captain, the goalie, the invincible goalie, and he's just crestfallen. He's like, the only purpose for me playing in this match was to be invincible, to not let Olive score. And Olive scores, and he's just going to leave instead of finishing up the extra periods of the match. And the captain on the other team, on Olive's team, he's actually hurt because he did this to get the ball back. He had this challenge with somebody else and hurt his ankle. And that character I was talking about, Ben Baker, he comes in and he's transferred to the team, to Olive's school, so he's actually going to take over from the captain spot. And then an interesting thing, they had these two other captains of these two other teams who have now become enamored with Olive's team, and they're saying like, "Wow, let's replace." And the guy's like, "No, you can't replace that guy. You would be play for another team." And just to show how he's already getting people to come and join the team. And then Tom is actually being like, "I'm going to leave, abandon his team." And he's like, "You're the captain. You can't leave us," and things like that. And then the coach, the personal coach of Tom, as Tom's walking away, the guy slaps him. Tom like spins around in a 360 and falls to the ground. I'm like, oh, child abuse. What's going on here? I mean, it's terrible that Tom's actually leaving like in a situation like that, but just how open hitting of children was just not too long ago. I think it's a positive thing to see how much this has changed. You wouldn't really have a TV show now where it's like, okay, the kid's leaving. Yes, it's bad that the kid leaves, but you don't hit him. Like, if I'm doing this scene right here, maybe I do a situation where Tom's like, I'm going to leave, and then the coach just comes in and says, no, if you leave, I'm leaving too. You know, like, I didn't train you to be this way. So you can have some kind of challenge like that, but some other way to call him, because it's like, look at that other team, how they've come together, and they show across the field. You see how Ben Baker now is actually joining that other team because that team has lost their captain from injury. That team lost their captain, but they're still sticking together. Yet for this team, it's just a mental situation, and he wants to bail on the team. So just a point of that. Interesting to see this different parenting kind of thing where hitting kids was a lot more acceptable not that long ago. And now it's actually something that's actually going on the wayside, which is a positive thing. So there's one scene in particular where Tom is talking to his teammates, and he has his hands in front of his face. We're going to put this on the screen right now. There's a scene in one of the early animations I made for the Carbon series where I actually did that same thing. Now, I don't know if it's just a general thing of just learning more about the animation, or did I have a flashback when I was creating it to this moment where I was like, oh, I remember that scene where by covering up the mouth and having the character talk, you don't have to animate the mouth moving. So you can have voiceover and other things going on. And you see these techniques and happening in animation a lot, where they'll have somebody like start the sentence and then the next word will be somebody look from somebody's back looking at other people. So you can tell it establishes who's speaking, but then from having the mouth covered, then you don't have to keep animating the mouth. So at least finding these different shortcuts to have the effective thing instead of actually having characters move, you just have like you zoom in or you zoom out and things like that, and then that way you have some kind of animation and things like that going in. So I think with these reviews that I'm doing, I'm going to be mentioning stuff I like about the actual show itself or the actual material, actual piece of entertainment that I'm watching or reviewing, and also just talk about the techniques and things like that that I see and use, and kind of just give you guys more information on how and why certain things occur in certain animation comic books, which I am somewhat familiar with and also learn from. So, winding down with this episode 8, finishing up this arc, and yeah, they do show, they actually even give it complete, they voice it directly and say part of it is learning that it's a team effort, it's teamwork. And I think this is something that, in my experience, boys learn in a different way than girls. I don't know. I don't, like that's I'm not a girl, so I don't know how girls grow up in the group environments, but team environments and things like this. What can you learn from watching a sport and a show like this? What can you learn from playing shows like playing sports like this? That group effort and things like that, where Tom's like actually changed and that whole they had this one technique of keeping the ball away from Olive and that team because they had the lead, and this one Tom's like, no, like let's actually do it. If you're going to regret if you win in this way, some kind of honor and some kind of thing that I think happens more with guys. There's this meme I saw where it's like when girls fight and it's like Michelle Obama kind of looking at Hillary and like look at this bitch breathing, and then it's like when guys fight, it's like Donald J. Trump shaking Kim Jong Un's hand, like sorry for nuking you, bro. And I think there is something about that with males where I think even in our evolutionary environment, it made more sense for us to not really hold grudges. We could compete and fight and disagree on things, but then have a certain mutual respect and a certain burning of the hatchet in that situation. Whereas I don't know why, but maybe females had the sensibility to actually, when they're back in the village in that kind of situation, maybe it made more sense for them to actually remember and keep score or keep tabs of who's actually more who's actually on their side and who actually isn't on their side. And maybe there's more, I don't know, because that necessarily shouldn't be gender specific, because even if you're outside in the woods and you're hunting something and you have a disagreement with somebody, if you miss up, some animal can either get away or that animal could kill you. So it's still life or death. And I get in the village, maybe if somebody's disagreeing with you and they lie to you and they don't care of your kid that well, the kid dies. So there could be a different risk benefit analysis that males and females evolved under, and I think I don't know. So there's a difference with that. But great show, great learning experience, really good show, really good show. Some of the animation is really rough. Just this the low quality of animation with the time and dating and the budget and things like that. But I'm really glad I found this channel, and I hope you guys can check it out and. Let me know if you've actually had watched Captain Tsubasa as a kid, and if not, let me know what you think when you actually watch it now. So I realize here it actually says Captain Tsubasa on the actual title, but I'm going to play the end song, and I hope I don't get like some kind of copyright strike for this. And one thing I've had a gripe with animes, and things like that, is in the songs, they often give spoilers for what's going to happen in the future. Like normally they'll have like an average anime has a 26 season arc. They'll have maybe 2 or 3 different end songs or start songs, but that's one of my pet peeves, just the kind of spoilers that occur during those actual songs. But yeah. It's also interesting how languages stick with you, how some memories can just come back. And this was a really enjoyable anime. I hope you guys do check it out if you haven't. And if you have, let me know below. Ah, such a good song. So many good memories. Well, anyway, I put myself into the animation, as you can see on the screen right now. So I enjoy doing these things. If you have an anime or manga that you'd like to be put into, let me know in the comment section or send me an email. I will charge you. It is my profession. I enjoy doing it, but I also enjoy getting paid. I have a bunch of other merch, like the one on the screen right now. Some of these things have speed drawings. I'll have a video or a podcast or something that's related to the drawing. Some of them are just things I like to draw. But check those out. Links below to the merchandise store. And thanks for watching again. Like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye.